The day Aunt Megan passed away, I was buried up to my elbows in garden soil, carefully planting the heirloom roses she had gifted me for my birthday. My phone buzzed nonstop in my pocket, demanding attention, until I finally peeled off my gardening gloves and answered the call. "Miss Williams," said an unfamiliar, formal voice. "This is Daniel Taylor, your Aunt Megan's attorney. I'm afraid I have some difficult news." My heart froze, and suddenly the roses felt unbearably heavy in my hands. These flowers were Aunt Megan's final gift to me, and somehow I already knew. "What happened?" I asked softly, dreading the answer. "Your aunt passed away peacefully in her sleep last night," he explained gently. He paused, clearly choosing his words with care. "She left explicit instructions for me to contact you first, before anyone else in the family." My knees gave out, and I sank slowly onto the damp earth, hardly hearing him anymore. Aunt Megan, the woman who had patiently taught me how to read, who'd secretly handed me warm chocolate chip cookies during tedious family gatherings, who had always stood by me, encouraging every dream and hope, was gone forever. "Miss Williams? Are you there?" "Yes," I whispered, barely managing to form the words. "I'm here. What do you need me to do?" He cleared his throat slightly. "Your aunt left very detailed instructions regarding her funeral arrangements," he explained, then paused again. "She also left a letter specifically for you. It must be read before the funeral service. Could you come to my office today?" I glanced down at the roses in my lap. They were the Queen Elizabeth variety, Aunt Megan's absolute favorite. She had given them to me herself just 3 weeks earlier, her eyes sparkling with the playful secrecy I'd always adored. "These roses have been in our family for generations," she'd said, handing them over with a knowing smile. Like all the best family secrets. At the time, I had assumed it was another one of her intriguing but mysterious comments. Now, as I stared at the blossoms, I wasn't so sure. "I'll be there within the hour," I promised. Daniel Taylor's office looked precisely as you'd expect for a lawyer accustomed to managing wealthy estates. It was all polished darkwood furniture, shelves lined with thick, leather-bound books, and an expansive window overlooking the city skyline, a view worth far more than I made in a year. Taylor stood up as I entered, giving me a sympathetic smile. "Miss Williams, thank you for coming so quickly. Please have a seat." I sat awkwardly in one of the plush chairs, trying to ignore how out of place I felt. "Mr. Taylor, what's all this about? Why did Aunt Megan insist you contact me first?" He silently reached into his desk drawer, producing 2 envelopes. The first was thick, official-looking, with the firm's letterhead. The second envelope was smaller, cream-colored, and had my name written across it in Aunt Megan's unmistakable, elegant handwriting. "Your aunt was certainly unique," Taylor began, choosing his words carefully. "Brilliant in business, meticulous in detail, and she had strong opinions about how her final wishes should be handled. She left explicit instructions regarding her will and funeral arrangements." "That definitely sounds like Aunt Megan," I murmured fondly. He gently slid the cream-colored envelope across the polished desk toward me. "She requested that you read this letter privately first. Once you're done, we can discuss everything else." My hands trembled slightly as I picked up the envelope. Aunt Megan's distinct scent, a comforting mix of roses and vanilla, still lingered faintly on the paper. I opened it slowly, carefully pulling out a single sheet of her personalized stationery. "My dearest Elizabeth," the letter began. "If you're reading this, I've finally run out of time. Please don't feel sad. I've lived precisely the life I wanted, something not many people can genuinely claim. Yet, there's one final favor I need from you, my beloved niece. At my funeral, you must read another letter aloud, a letter that will change our family forever. It is hidden within the secret compartment of my jewelry box. Do you remember how to open it? I showed you when you were just 12, using that trick with the carved rose. Some may call this letter revenge, but I prefer to see it as justice. Delayed, perhaps, but justice all the same. You deserve the truth, and so do I. Everything I own, Huntington Industries, my personal assets, all of it, is now yours. Be brave, Elizabeth." My breath caught in my throat. The room suddenly felt smaller, and the enormity of Aunt Megan's final request settled heavily upon me. Her secrets had always been deeper than anyone knew, and now it was up to me to reveal them. But there's one important condition. You must read this letter aloud at my funeral in front of the entire family, with no exceptions. I understand this is asking a lot from you, especially at a difficult time like this. Yet, Elizabeth, you've always been the strong one, the honest and brave one. That's exactly why it must be you. With all my love, Aunt Megan P.S. Under no circumstances should you let them bury me in anything beige. You know exactly how I feel about beige. I read Aunt Megan's letter twice, then slowly lifted my eyes to look at Taylor. She left everything to me? I asked, almost unable to believe it. He nodded solemnly, opening the official envelope with practiced calm. Huntington Industries, her personal estate, investment portfolios, approximately $115 million in total assets. However, as she stated, this inheritance is conditional on your fulfilling her final request. My head began to spin. Aunt Megan had always been exceptionally generous with me, but this was beyond anything I had ever imagined. What about the rest of the family, my father, my cousins? I asked hesitantly. Taylor gave a small, careful nod. There are a few smaller bequests for them, but the vast majority of the estate will go to you, provided you honor her conditions. Thoughts flashed through my mind about my father, who had always envied his younger sister's success. I thought of my cousins who spent years ingratiating themselves to Aunt Megan, hoping they would inherit her wealth. All those family gatherings where Megan sat quietly in the background, observing everything carefully, as if waiting patiently for a particular moment. When is the funeral? I finally asked. In 5 days, Taylor replied promptly. Your aunt was precise about every detail. The service will be held at St. Patrick's Cathedral, followed by a reception at her estate. The entire family is expected to attend. I stood up, clutching Megan's letter tightly. Then I should go. I have a jewelry box to find. Taylor stopped me just as I reached the door. Miss Williams, one more thing, he called out softly. Your aunt specifically wanted me to pass along one more message. She said, Elizabeth, you'll know exactly what to do with the truth. The drive to Megan's estate felt endless, even though it was only 30 minutes. My mind raced, overflowing with unanswered questions. What was written in that second letter? What family secret was so critical that Megan had made revealing it a condition of her will? As I approached, the iron gates swung open automatically. Megan had given me the security code years ago, claiming she trusted me far more than any electronic system. Her home looked exactly as I remembered, a grand Victorian mansion surrounded by beautifully maintained gardens, roses climbing gracefully along every wall. Mrs. Evans, the housekeeper, met me at the entrance, her eyes red and swollen from crying. Oh, Miss Elizabeth, thank goodness you're here. Your aunt left instructions for you to have full access to her personal rooms. Thank you, Mrs. Evans. I won't be long, I reassured her gently. Aunt Megan's bedroom was upstairs, overlooking her prized rose garden. Like my aunt herself, it combined elegant sophistication with a playful charm, colorful silk curtains, contemporary artwork alongside classic family portraits, and countless subtle nods to her love for roses. Her jewelry box sat untouched on the dresser, just as I remembered. Its surface was intricately carved with delicate floral designs. Carefully, I traced the detailed carvings until my fingers found the familiar hidden mechanism, the small rose pattern Megan had once taught me to recognize. Third petal from the left, I whispered softly, recalling her precise instructions from my childhood. With a quiet click, a hidden panel opened smoothly, revealing a secret compartment inside. Lying within was another envelope, sealed securely with wax and clearly labeled to be opened at my funeral. It felt heavier than I had expected, and I could sense photographs hidden inside. My hand trembled slightly as I picked it up, and for just a moment, temptation nearly overtook me. I wanted desperately to open it right then and there. But I knew Megan well enough to understand that everything she did had a deeper meaning. If she insisted that this secret be revealed publicly at her funeral, surrounded by the entire family, she must have had an important reason. Trusting her judgment, I carefully slipped the sealed envelope into my bag and glanced around the room one last time. On Meghan's bedside table stood a framed photograph I had never seen before. It showed a youthful Meghan standing proudly outside the original office building of Huntington Industries. She wore a confident, knowing smile, her signature look, one that always made me feel like she understood everything about people, especially the things they tried hardest to hide. "What secret did you keep all these years, Aunt Meghan?" I murmured softly to the photo. What truth could be so important you'd wait a lifetime to reveal it? The next 5 days passed quickly, filled with funeral preparations, tension, and endless family drama. My father phoned multiple times, alternating between genuine concern over my role in the funeral arrangements and thinly veiled anxiety about Meghan's mysterious will. My cousins bombarded me with endless messages, each more transparent in their selfishness and greed than the last. Through all the chaos, I never let Meghan's sealed envelope out of my sight. At night, when everything was quiet, I'd take it out and turn it over in my hands, wondering desperately what revelations it contained. What truth was so monumental that Meghan was willing to stake her entire legacy upon its disclosure? The morning of the funeral was bright and clear, almost serene. I chose my outfit carefully, a deep blue suit, Meghan's favorite color, and pinned one of her cherished roses to my lapel. The envelope felt heavy in my bag, its significance greater than just paper and photographs. St. Patrick's Cathedral was overflowing with attendees by the time I arrived. The Huntington family was old money, and Meghan had been a beloved figure, admired for both her business acumen and extensive charity work. The pews were crowded with family members, business colleagues, and prominent city figures. My father caught me immediately as I entered, anxiety visibly etched into his expression. "Elizabeth, we need to talk about the will. Taylor refuses to tell us anything. He insists we wait until after the service. Do you know what's going on?" I looked him firmly in the eye. "We'll all find out together, Dad." That's exactly how Aunt Meghan wanted it. He gripped my arm urgently as I tried to move past. "Elizabeth, if you know something..." "Let go, Dad," I said, calm but firm. "This is Meghan's funeral. Let's show some respect." The service itself was beautiful and perfect, exactly as Meghan would have wished. True to her instructions, nothing beige was anywhere in sight. Roses in deep reds and vibrant pinks adorned every corner. The minister's words celebrated her generosity, sharp intellect, and unwavering commitment to improving the lives of others. Finally, it was time. Taylor caught my eye from his seat in the front pew and gave a subtle nod. My hands shook slightly as I stood and moved toward the podium, gripping Meghan's envelope tightly. The cathedral quieted instantly, hundreds of eyes watching me with tense anticipation. My father sat rigidly in the front row, anxiety plain across his features. Beside him, my cousins, Scott and Amanda, leaned forward eagerly, like vultures circling their prey. Taking a deep breath, I steadied myself, the calming fragrance of roses surrounding me. At that moment, it felt like Meghan stood beside me, giving me strength and courage. Before her death, I began, my voice remarkably steady despite my pounding heart. My Aunt Meghan left specific instructions. She entrusted me with a letter that she insisted must be read here today, publicly, before everyone gathered here. Slowly, deliberately, I broke the wax seal, fully aware of the expectant silence. Inside the envelope, as expected, were several pages of written documents accompanied by photographs. As I removed them carefully, I heard a sharp, shocked gasp from my father. The first photograph depicted a young Meghan, smiling brightly beside a man I didn't recognize. They held up what appeared to be architectural blueprints. The next image was of the same unknown man at a construction site, overseeing the early construction of what was unmistakably the original Huntington Industries building. My name was Meghan Huntington. I read clearly from the letter, feeling every word resonate profoundly in the charged silence of the cathedral. My hands were steady as I unfolded Meghan's letter, my voice clear and confident, echoing gently through the silent cathedral. My name was Megan Huntington, and this is the true story of how Huntington Industries began. I began carefully, feeling every word carry weight through the hushed room. The man in these photographs is Kevin Davis, a gifted engineer, a visionary innovator, and my original business partner. It was Kevin who truly founded what would later become Huntington Industries. A ripple of shock passed through the congregation. I noticed my father's face pale dramatically in the front row. Kevin and I met at university, I continued. We shared a dream of changing the world by developing sustainable, eco-friendly building materials. Kevin was the engineering genius, while I managed the business side. Together, we built the foundation of Huntington Industries. I paused, taking out another photograph from the envelope. It showed Megan and Kevin smiling, shaking hands over a signed contract. We were equal partners. Everything was split evenly between us. The patents, the profits, and the future of the company. This was our agreement until the night of November 8th, 1958, when Kevin died tragically in a car crash. My father suddenly attempted to stand, visibly agitated, but Uncle Henry reached out, firmly pulling him back down. But Kevin's death was not an accident. I continued firmly. The brakes in his car had been deliberately tampered with. Unfortunately, I discovered this truth only after the investigation was already closed. I raised my eyes and locked my gaze directly onto my father's anxious face. I also found something else, legal documents filed just hours before Kevin's death, transferring his entire half of the business into the Huntington Family Trust. These papers appeared to carry Kevin's signature, a signature later proven to be forged by Kevin's supposed business partner, my brother, George Huntington. The cathedral erupted into gasps and shocked whispers. My father surged to his feet, fury in his eyes. "Stop this madness right now," he shouted angrily. "This is slander." "No, Dad," I said calmly, clearly, meeting his furious gaze without wavering. "This is the truth." Aunt Megan left behind proof. I held up the envelope containing Megan's carefully collected documents, contracts, forensic evidence, police reports that had been quietly hidden, and detailed financial records. She kept everything. Why? The anguished question came from my cousin Scott, who stared at his uncle, my father, with horror and disbelief. Why reveal this now? Turning back to Megan's letter, I continued reading. "I am revealing this now because I've spent 60 years building Huntington Industries into something Kevin would be proud of. I've ensured our success has funded research, supported innovation and sustainability, and created opportunities for brilliant minds just like his. But for those same 60 years, I've watched my brother benefit from his crime, raising his family to believe privilege and power exempt them from justice." My father slumped back into the pew, the fight visibly draining from him as Megan's words continued to unfold. The truth should have come out years ago. Yet, by the time I gathered sufficient proof, Huntington Industries had grown significantly, employing thousands of people whose livelihoods depended on its survival. Exposing George's crime prematurely would have devastated innocent families. Thus, I made a difficult decision. I waited, patiently building and strengthening the company, so that when the truth was revealed, Huntington Industries could withstand the storm. Finally, I pulled out one last, worn document from the envelope, a faded envelope addressed to Kevin Davis's daughter, Emily. And that brings me to my final confession. I read carefully. "Throughout these years, I've quietly supported Kevin's only surviving child, Emily Davis. I've anonymously funded her education, backed her groundbreaking research in sustainable engineering, and watched her grow into a remarkable, ethical scientist, just like her father. Today, Emily Davis runs one of the country's most innovative green technology firms, unaware until this moment who her secret benefactor has been." More startled whispers filled the cathedral as a woman rose slowly from her seat among the middle pews, her eyes wide with astonishment and emotion. She was about my age, with Kevin's deep, thoughtful eyes and a determined expression that echoed her father's resolve. Megan had carefully orchestrated every detail, even ensuring that Emily Davis would be present to witness this profound moment. Taking a deep breath, I continued reading, my voice growing stronger and more certain with every word. The second part of my will leaves a 41% ownership stake in Huntington Industries to Emily Davis as partial compensation for what was unjustly taken from her father. The controlling interest in the company, however, goes to my niece Elizabeth, the only member of the Huntington family who has consistently shown the ethics, integrity, and vision that Kevin and I once shared. I raised my gaze, absorbing the stunned silence that enveloped the cathedral. The last line of Megan's letter resonated deeply. Signed, Megan Huntington, co-founder of Huntington Industries and keeper of its greatest shame. For a moment, no one moved or spoke. The silence felt heavy and charged. Finally, slowly, Emily Davis stood up and began walking toward the front, stopping directly before my father. His appearance had drastically changed, as though the revelations had aged him significantly within minutes. All these years, Emily's voice trembled slightly as she spoke. I thought my father had failed or abandoned his dreams. I had no idea, no inkling, that he had been betrayed. Ms. Davis, I stepped down gently from the podium, reaching out with genuine sympathy. I'm so deeply sorry for everything that was taken from you and your family. Her eyes filled with tears as she turned to me, her voice soft but filled with emotion. Thank you for having the courage to share Megan's truth. She was watching over me my entire life, wasn't she? She was trying to make things right. I responded quietly, in her way. The hours following the funeral service passed swiftly, yet tensely. The reception was understandably fraught with tension and division. Family members broke into heated groups, some demanding that the revelations be buried, others insisting we immediately involve authorities, while a few sat quietly in shock, trying to process the reality that had just come to light. My father vanished quickly after the service ended, and weeks passed before I heard from him again. Eventually, he entered a rehabilitation center, finally beginning to confront the heavy burden of guilt he'd carried for decades. In the following months, the true history behind Huntington Industries became widely known, sparking public discussion and scrutiny. However, Megan had been right. The company was resilient enough to withstand the revelations. Under Emily's technical brilliance and my dedication to Megan's ethical vision, Huntington Industries embarked upon a new chapter. 1 year later, I found myself standing in Megan's cherished rose garden, blooming vibrantly, more beautiful than ever. Emily joined me weekly there, meetings where we planned company strategies and shared our mutual passion for sustainable innovation. You know what's strange? Emily gently caressed the petals of one of Megan's favorite Queen Elizabeth roses. I've always felt guided, protected somehow, like someone was quietly steering my life. I assumed it was my father's spirit, looking after me from beyond. Now I understand. It was Megan all along. She tried to protect everyone, I said thoughtfully, gazing at the lush garden. The employees, the legacy, you, even my father. But she couldn't let the truth remain hidden forever. Emily considered this carefully. Do you think she made the right decision, waiting all those years? I paused, thinking deeply. I believe she did the very best anyone could in an impossible situation. Megan transformed a business built upon deception into something genuinely good and beneficial. She made sure you thrived, and ultimately, she ensured that the truth came out in her own way, on her own terms. Emily studied me quietly for a moment. And you? Do you ever regret being the one who had to deliver such difficult truths? I gazed thoughtfully across the garden, recalling Megan's cryptic smiles, her hidden strength, and her subtle wisdom. No, I finally answered with certainty. Megan chose me because she knew I could handle it. She trusted me to understand that facing difficult truths is sometimes the only path to real integrity. Emily smiled warmly, pointing toward the Huntington Industries building in the distance. She would be proud of what we've built, a true partnership, exactly as she and my father originally intended. I gently touched one of Megan's roses, now flourishing beautifully. She once told me these roses had been passed down through generations, carrying secrets just like our own. But perhaps now it was time for new traditions, traditions built on honesty instead of secrets, genuine partnership rather than competition, and working together instead of taking from each other. Emily gently squeezed my hand, her expression warm and hopeful. "I think both our fathers would have appreciated that," she said softly, her voice filled with sincere emotion. Later that evening, as I sat quietly in Megan's study, now my study, I sifted through company reports, my mind full of new plans and possibilities. As I flipped through her old desk calendar, a small, neatly folded note slipped out onto the desk. The note was dated the very day Megan had passed, and her familiar, graceful handwriting brought a lump to my throat. "Dearest Elizabeth, if you're reading this, you've fulfilled my final request. You've courageously confronted the truth and handled it with remarkable grace. That's precisely why I chose you. Not merely to inherit Huntington Industries, but to transform it into the company Kevin and I once envisioned. Next spring, the roses in the garden will bloom once more. When you see their petals opening, remember this. Even in the darkest soil, beauty can flourish if only we dare to plant the seeds. All my love, Megan." I carefully placed the precious note back into my desk drawer, feeling deeply moved. Outside the window, the setting sun bathed the rose garden in warm shades of gold and amber, a peaceful beauty that seemed to reflect Megan's lasting legacy. She had left me far more than just a thriving business empire. She had given me a profound opportunity to correct past wrongs, build something truly meaningful, and show that the truth, no matter how long hidden, always had the power to blossom. Tomorrow would bring endless meetings, difficult decisions, and all the enormous responsibilities that came with guiding a successful multi-million-dollar company. But tonight, in the calm and quiet of Megan's study, surrounded by the gentle fragrance of roses, I realized the greatest inheritances aren't always measured in money or material possessions. Sometimes, the heaviest yet most meaningful inheritances are the truths we carry forward, the lessons we embody, and the courage to turn past pain into future strength. Just like Megan, I would hold this truth close, not to destroy, but to rebuild, not to punish, but to heal. I would nurture something beautiful and lasting from the complexities of our history. That had always been Megan's way. It was the path she'd carefully prepared me to follow. And deep within me, I knew Megan was somewhere watching, her familiar, knowing smile lighting up her face, proud that her final secret had at last emerged into the healing warmth of daylight.